Mark and the most heinous crime ever. In 2009, at exactly 4 a.m., inside a police station in Toronto, Canada, the atmosphere was tense. In the holding cell, Mark Peterson, a 26-year-old man, sat among 12 other detainees, all awaiting investigation. Each of them started sharing their charges. And one was accused of theft, another of armed robbery, a third of assault, and so on. But Mark remained silent. Silence was not out of confusion about his arrest. He knew very well that no crime committed by the others could compare to the atrocity he had committed. But before we continue with the events of 2009, let's go back to 1998, to the late months of that year. The beginning, Mark at 16. Mark Peterson was born and raised in a small rural town in Ontario, Canada, in a family of 9, his parents and 7 siblings. Like his brothers and sisters, who led ordinary lives, Mark struggled to succeed in anything. Despite his young age, he carried a heart full of resentment, not out of mere jealousy or competition, but rather a deep-seated hatred. He always asked himself, why do others have what I don't? He had no moral compass. His only goal was to acquire wealth, regardless of the means. His parents tried to advise him, but he never listened. At the end of 1998, he decided to leave his small town and move to Toronto, searching for better opportunities. His mother strongly opposed his departure, urging him to stay and try again at home. But Mark reassured her that he would remain in contact with his Aunt Caroline, who lived in Toronto. Caroline had been married since 1993 to a wealthy and successful businessman in real estate and investments. Whenever she visited their hometown, Mark noticed how well off she was. Her expensive clothes, gold jewelry, and financial stability were impossible to ignore. From that moment, he decided that her husband would be his ticket to success. Mark in Toronto, a plan for wealth. Upon arriving in Toronto, Mark settled in North York, sharing a small apartment with other young men. He spent 2 years working daily odd jobs such as selling sodas on the street, earning between $10 and $20 per day, barely enough to cover his rent. However, he had an observant eye for business. He realized that juice and smoothie bars were highly profitable. Seeing an opportunity, he took a job at one of these shops, not to remain a worker, but to study the business and eventually own one himself. At the year 2000, Mark was working in a juice shop on Yonge Street, where he spent 5 years mastering the trade. He climbed the ranks, learning every detail, from purchasing ingredients to pricing, selling, and managing financial records. By then, he knew enough to open his own shop. His next move was to visit his Aunt Caroline and pitch the idea of investing in a juice bar. Caroline was impressed, particularly because Mark demonstrated strong knowledge in the field. When her husband arrived home, she introduced the idea to him. He had no experience in this type of business, but Mark seemed convincing enough. Mark becomes a business partner. An agreement was made. Each would own 50% of the business, with Caroline's husband funding it and Mark managing it. Within 2 months, they opened the juice bar in North York, in a high-traffic area. From day one, Mark resorted to fraud and deception to maximize his personal profits. However, he was careful. He made sure to hand over enough earnings to his uncle to keep him content and unsuspecting. A year and a half passed, and in mid-2007, Mark received a phone call from Caroline. Her husband had fallen ill. Mark rushed to the hospital, where he found the man in critical condition in the intensive care unit, while Caroline sat outside, deeply worried. Mark wasn't thinking about the man's health. Instead, he was calculating what would happen to the juice shop if his uncle died. Who would inherit his share? Would someone with financial knowledge take over and expose his fraud? Manipulating the contract. Mark began persuading Caroline that they needed to revise the partnership contract, ensuring that the juice bar ownership would be solely between him and her. He claimed this would protect her from legal disputes over inheritance if her husband passed away. Caroline was greedy, just like Mark, though she concealed it better. She also had multiple extramarital affairs, a fact that Mark had long known but kept to himself for his own benefit. After her husband was discharged from the hospital, Caroline pressured him into changing the contract. Within 2 days, the ownership was transferred solely to Mark and Caroline. A week later, her husband died naturally, and Mark remained indifferent. His only concern was making sure the business stayed under his control. The ultimate crime, an unforgivable act. 2009, Mark continued his fraud without issue. Caroline would visit the juice bar monthly to collect her share of the profits, and their partnership seemed to work. Then something twisted began to consume Mark's mind. He resented the fact that Caroline had relationships with other men. His thoughts darkened. Why should she be with others and not with me? One day he decided to take what he wanted, by force. Visited her apartment in North York at 11 a.m. She welcomed him warmly, but his stares were unsettling. When she went into the kitchen to prepare coffee, he grabbed a wooden rod and struck her hard on the head, then forced her into the bedroom. There, he assaulted her, twice. Once he finished, reality hit him. He realized that she would never keep quiet. She would tell everyone, including his mother. He could not let her live. He took a rope from the balcony and tied her hands. Caroline, terrified, begged for her life, offering him all the money he wanted. Mark was beyond reason. Went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and stabbed her 26 times until she lay motionless. Then ransacked her bedroom, stealing her money and jewelry. To cover his tracks, he poured alcohol over her body and set the apartment on fire before walking out as if nothing had happened. Neighbors noticed the smoke and called the police. Firefighters arrived. But by then, Caroline's burned body was discovered. Investigators soon determined that she had been murdered before the fire started. Witnesses reported seeing Mark leaving the building that morning. When police confronted him, he immediately confessed. His crimes shocked everyone, including his own family, who refused to believe he was capable of such monstrosities. Mark was sentenced to death, and when the execution date arrived, his family refused to claim his body, leaving him abandoned even in death. Fitting end for a man who never knew mercy.